Hi folks, welcome to the first video in the chapter 8, My Open Math Homework. And in this video, we're going to take a look at question number 1. All right, so let's read through this. A researcher is interested in finding a 98% confidence interval for the mean number minutes students are concentrating on their professor during a 1-hour statistics lecture. The study included 124 students who averaged 32.9 minutes concentrating on their professor during the hour lecture. The standard deviation was 12.3 minutes. Round your answers to 3 decimal places where possible. Okay, so before we look at the My Open Math questions, we're actually going to take a look at StatCrunch to kind of help us visualize like what is it that we're finding here, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and open my StatCrunch and we're going to go over to our stat and I'll tell you why in a little bit, but right now we're going to go to T-stat, okay? We're going to go to T-stat and we're going to go to one sample with summary, okay? So let's look at this question real quick again. It says the study included 124 students who averaged 32.9 minutes. So in the sample mean, I actually want to type in 32.9 minutes. And it says the standard deviation is 12.3 minutes. So now I'm going to type 12.3 where it says standard deviation. Now the sample size is the 124 students that the study included. Okay. Now that we've made those choices, we don't want to do a hypothesis test. We actually want to do the confidence interval. And if you look at this question, it says that it's a 98% confidence interval. So we don't want 0.95, we want 0.98. Okay. I'm also going to include this confidence interval plot. That's optional so that we can kind of see what we're looking at. Okay. So I've typed in the information and I go to compute. And I actually want to take a look at this table right here, okay? So this is a 98% confidence interval plot. And what we have in the middle over here is the 32.9 minutes, okay? And what we also have for the sort of the x-axis is we're looking at sort of the bandwidth of what will be included in this 98% confidence interval. Okay, so we know that if we average the 124 students, they're concentrating for about 33 minutes. But that's sort of just like one data point. And so what we want to do is we want to be really sure that the average of the entire class, all the students, is going to be like close to that 32.9. Okay. And we want to know that where is that true average? And so if you look at the bottom, it looks like it goes from about 30 all the way to 35 or 35 and a half. Okay. And so what that means is that given this information, we are 98% sure that students will be um, concentrating on the professor somewhere between like 30 minutes and 35 minutes. Okay. So that's sort of what we're finding here. Now let's take a few steps back. Let's go back. Let's pull out some important information from our problem and let's make sure we know how to choose this stuff that I chose in StatCrunch. Okay. So I'm going to go back to the notes or to the problem and let's take a look at what we have. All right, so I'm going to highlight a few things. We have a 98% confidence interval, right? We have a mean number of minutes. So we're looking at a mean or an average situation. And then we have some information that I did type into StatCrunch, right? We have 124 students. They average 32.9 minutes concentrating, and the standard deviation of that sample was 12.3. Okay. So says, part A says to compute the confidence interval, use, and they ask us to choose between a couple distributions. Okay, so let me go back to the screen where we can actually see the question, but it asks us to choose between a z distribution and a t distribution. Okay, so if I come back over here for a moment, let's talk about what the differences between a z and a t distribution are. Okay, so a z distribution is used when the standard deviation of the entire population is known. Okay. Not the standard deviation of a sample, but the standard deviation of the whole population. But the t distribution, that's used when our standard deviation for the whole population is unknown. Okay. So that would be really important for us to know. Do we know the standard deviation of the entire population or do we not? Okay. And when I go back to the part that I highlighted in the blue, that standard deviation was of the 124 students. It was not of all of the students in the lecture. Okay. And so for that reason, in this case, we are going to take a look at a t distribution. Okay. And that's why when I was using StatCrunch earlier, I said t distribution. I didn't choose the z distribution. Okay. All right. I can go ahead and type that in here too for right now. Okay. Look at part B. With 98% confidence, the population mean minutes of concentration is between something and something. And so this is where if I go back to StatCrunch and I look at how long this line is, it turns out that I need to know exactly where, and let me see if I can mark this out, where the line starts and where the line stops, right? And so I had estimated this is about 30 and this is about 35.5, but I don't know the exact values. And I know that my open math is going to want me to type in the exact values. Okay. So let me go ahead and erase my estimates. All right. And I'm going to go back to the slide that I actually flipped through really quickly earlier. Okay, so right when we typed in all of the information, you may have seen this screen pop up. Okay, so we had chosen a one sample T summary confidence interval with a confidence of 30 or of 98%. Okay, and so it gives us a few pieces of information here that are actually pretty important. This lower limit, you see that number is like 30.296. That's where that bar ended on the other screen, like the lower end of that bar. And similarly, the upper limit is between 35 is at 35.504. Okay. These are the limits that with 95% confidence, we can say that that students concentrate somewhere between 30.296 and 35.504 minutes. That the average, we're like 98% sure that average is somewhere in there. Okay. And so let me get rid of these drawings for a moment. And I'm going to come back to my page where I had the numbers so I can write them down. But we said that the 98% confidence the population mean minutes of concentration is between 30.296 and 35.504 minutes. Okay. So the true average of that population is somewhere between there. We're like 98% sure. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and type those in here before I forget. So 30.296 and 35.504. Okay. All right. Part C. If many groups of 124 randomly selected members are studied, then a different confidence interval would be produced for each group. And because we're looking at a 98% confidence interval, we say that 98% of these confidence intervals will contain the true population mean minutes of concentration. And what percent will not contain that? Well, 98, if I take 98 away from 100%, I'm left with 2. And that's the percent that will not contain the true population average number of minutes. Okay. So let's type those in here. We've got 98 and we've got 2. We'll submit our questions and we've got everything right. Okay. So I hope this video was helpful in just thinking about some of the vocabulary we've been learning along the way, like sample size, your average, your mean, but really thinking about making those decisions now. Like, do we know the standard deviation of the whole population, or do we only know the standard deviation for a sample of it? Okay. All right. Let's go ahead and stop this video here. I'll make a few other videos because I know these are complicated problems and hopefully that'll help you find some success in the homework. All right. See you later.